Greetings ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Retro Gaming Resurrection, a show where we take a look at retro games from the past, see whether they are still worth visiting today, and try to get them running on the modern PC platform so that they would provide you with the best possible experience they can. This is Galistopheles, and in this pilot episode we are going to take a look at a game which I have so far always deemed as the very best example of the classical survival horror gaming genre, Alone in the Dark and the New Nightmare. Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmare, also known as Alone in the Dark 4, is a survival horror video game developed by Darkworks and published by Infogrames back in 2001 for Microsoft Windows, PlayStation, Dreamcast and even Game Boy Color platforms. There also was a PlayStation 2 release a few months after the initial release cycle, but that one only got released in Europe for whatever reason. As of 2021, developer Darkworks no longer exists, and according to the wiki, they closed their doors already back in 2011. They were mostly known for their works for Cold Fear, another survival horror game in very similar style to Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare, and Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Advanced Warfighter, a tactical shooter which received rather positive critical reception. The publisher Infogrames, on the other hand, is still present, albeit wearing a coat of Atari on its shoulders, ever since acquiring Hasbro Interactive and its intellectual rights to the Atari brand. The game plays exactly like you would expect an older Resident Evil-like game to play. You get the classical isometric camera angles along with the tank controls, which I personally am a very big fan of. The pre-rendered backgrounds, however, have received some nice development magic and are not just a background slapped on top of a single layer as it was most accustomed back in the day. This is most evident when you use the flashlight in-game, which you'll be doing a lot, and it looks just amazing to see that they have managed to make it work within a world which comes from the same era as the earlier Resident Evil games. Now, please do correct me if I'm wrong here, but I do not remember any of the Resident Evil games having anything even remotely close to this kind of a lighting system. So, you venture around in a spooky setting, clearing rooms of enemies, solving puzzles and trying to do your best in order to survive. When you compare it to the aforementioned games though, the main difference is probably in the way of the New Nightmare handles the save game mechanics. Throughout the game you acquire a limited number of save tokens, similar to early Resident Evil games. But you can use these tokens whenever you wish and do not have to run back to a saving station / typewriter. Nor is there a limit placed on your character's inventory, which would inhibit you from carrying every item you find around with you. In my opinion, I really like those changes as they increase the overall pacing of the game and don't force you to backtrack too much simply in order to save your progress. You could argue that it takes away from the pressure and difficulty of the game, but we will cover that next. So, although the game plays nicely and I absolutely love it, not everything is merry with this title though. And after going through it once more, I can definitely say that Alone in the Dark: The New Nightmare is no longer the best example of a survival horror video game genre in my books, and that it was most probably just my nostalgia talking before going through the game again in order to make this video happen. The game does have some horror elements in it, and when played in a dark room all alone with headphones on, it can genuinely freak you out during specific sections of the game. But the main thing that this game lacks is the difficulty. There is no difficulty selector available, so what you see is what you get, and what you get is an extremely easy game to beat combat-wise. The only real time that an enemy can hit you is when you're trying to stroll past one in order to save up on some ammunition, or when you're stuck in the reloading animation, which you basically never should because it is way much faster and more optimal to simply bring up the inventory and reload your current weapon from there without any animation interference at all. This simple trick completely breaks the combat system, and you can essentially just stunlock most enemies in the game with whichever weapon you like.
Fuck.
The game becomes so easy that once I reached the second half of it, I had more than 40 save game tokens available in the inventory, which is more than enough to perform a complete playthrough of this game. Speaking of playthroughs, the game does have a bit of replay value to it, as you are given the choice of either playing as the series' main protagonist Edward Carnby or an ethnology professor Eileen Sedrak. Although the overarching storyline and locations are the same for both characters, the gameplay gives you a fresh angle on the story and you get to experience what the other character went through to get to the final conclusion. Both characters also have their own motives to visit a Shadow Island, so if you were to play this game, then yeah, definitely play through the game with both characters to get the whole picture. Voice work is also something I would like to briefly touch upon before moving on to bringing this game back to life on modern systems. It is exactly as cheesy as you have come to expect a mid-90s survival horror game being. It's sloppy, poorly written, poorly acted, and makes you grin every time there's a cutscene, and I wouldn't have it any other way.
I'm warning you, I won't hesitate to shoot!
Eileen?
Carnby? You scared the daylights out of me. I almost shot you.
I mean, I knew when going back into this again that the voice acting was not excellent, but my mind must have blocked out all the crazy inconsistencies and sudden mood changes that the characters go through, which at times is absolutely flabbergastingly awful. Anyways, if you're giving this one a go, you're in for a world of treat in cheese. But now, let's see what we can do to get Alone in the Dark, the new nightmare, running on modern systems. For reference, today is December 12th, 2021, so if something has changed in the future when you're watching this video and this guide no longer works, just be aware of the dates and you can probably just leave the comment down below so that I would know what to check and provide an update as needed. The game is perfectly playable on the PC platform, both under Linux and Windows operating systems. It is using the OpenGL graphics API and I am using the GOG version of the game, as that is my preferred platform of choice due to their DRM-free philosophy and, well, do keep in mind that getting all the games running properly can differ quite a bit depending on the hardware you're using, especially the GPU. In this case, I'm using an NVIDIA GPU and the full specs of my system can be found in the description box below. On AMD systems, I know that on Windows the OpenGL driver is so poor that all the animations within the menus are running at ludicrous speeds. Unfortunately, there is no easy fix for that, but it is worth trying to go with Linux, as AMD's open source OpenGL drivers on Linux are light years better than what they are on Windows. And if that fails, you could also try out Zinc, which is a Linux-only wrapper for OpenGL, allowing you to run OpenGL applications using Vulkan rendering. We definitely need something like that on Windows as well, as by the looks of it, AMD ain't interested in improving their OpenGL driver stack at all. So, on Windows 11, the process of getting Alone in the Dark full running is currently pretty straightforward. Using the GOG Galaxy, I installed the game. The GPU driver version, just for the record, is 497.09. And after installing the game, it just works right out of the box without any modifications. A thing to note with the video options is that the high quality option mainly only affects shadows and sometimes can fix an issue if when launching the game you would hear the intro video but only see a black screen. The custom resolution of 2880x2160 is definitely not a standard one, and I created it previously in the NVIDIA control panel for these kind of use cases specifically, as it is essentially a 4:3 resolution which you would get when you trim off the size of a 4K native resolution. On Linux though, things aren't exactly as straightforward as you might expect, and there are a few methods on how you can run this game. For the reference, I am using NVIDIA's proprietary drivers, version 495.46 on Arch Linux with the kernel 5.15.8. In order to easily install and manage games from GOG, I use Lutris. The installation script on Lutris works just fine and installs the game, but this is where it gets a bit tricky, and after spending some time digging around, I discovered two optimal ways for you to play this game. So the option A. You can run this game in a windowed state using the -windowed argument followed by X and Y values of your desired custom resolution. And this works like a charm, but not everyone wishes to play their games in a windowed state, and that leaves us with the option B, which is to change your launch target parameter from alone4.exe to launch.exe, and also make sure that the Wine version being used does not include the Proton's full screen hack, otherwise the videos will get messed up. The trouble that I ran into with this method is that I cannot seem to be able to define custom resolutions in the OS so that the Wine would recognize them as supported. I'm sure that this can somehow be done, maybe using a registry hack on the Wine prefix, but that goes way too deep for the low amount of profit it would actually return. Anyways, 1280 by 1024 is good enough for running this game in all actuality, but we can do better than that. If we add mode validation option to the device section of the XOR.conf with the value of allow non-edit modes, then we can get all the unusual resolutions which so far have not been available for us under Linux. Resolutions such as 2048 x 1536, which belongs to the 4x3 format family. Nice. That will work great, and the ending image is nice and crisp. Now to wrap this up. Alone in the Dark, the New Nightmare is a relic of the past. It is not perfect by any means, but for someone who hasn't experienced it before and is interested in an old-school survival horror games with tank controls and beautiful cinematic isometric camera angles, this is a game which I wholeheartedly recommend giving a go. It is available digitally from both GOG.com and Steam, but based on PC Gaming Wiki's information, the Steam version has more issues than the GOG one, so it's just something to be aware of. The digital version sells for €5.39 at the time of the writing and is very frequently discounted down to as low as €1.39. Needless to say, the game will pay for itself very quickly indeed. The physical CD version of the game is also readily available on the second-hand market and going for pretty low prices of around £4. Unfortunately, this game came out during an era where the big box packaging was being ditched in favor of your regular plastic DVD enclosures, so there is no real collector's value to this game. Though the case art is really nice, and I definitely wouldn't mind having this in my collection. Anyways, I would like to thank you very much for watching, and if you have any specific stuff you would like to see covered in the future, then please, by all means, let me know in the comments below. The next episode of Retro Gaming Resurrection is planned to cover a game from 1997, which features a top-down hack-and-slash gameplay, but is rendered in 3D. Mostly, that is. If you think you know which game it could be, then be sure to leave your guess down in the comments below, and the winner would receive a shoutout in the beginning of the next episode. But until that time comes, thank you all for watching once more, and may you have a lovely rest of your day, whenever, wherever you are. Bye bye.